I'm number 18,000 in queue.
That's not bad. I'm number 42,000.
I got in.
Seriously?
Yeah. I made it to Character Select, clicked Enter World, and it kicked me back out.
So you didn't get in?
I spiritually got in.
Guys, the new starting quest is broken.
How do you know? You're still in queue.
Someone on stream got through. The first NPC won't spawn, so everybody is standing in a field punching invisible wolves.
This is supposed to be the biggest launch in MMO history.
It is. There have never been this many people staring at a server error before.
Wait, the developers just posted.
What did they say?
We are aware of an issue affecting a small number of players.
A small number?
Apparently the small number is everybody.
Welcome back to MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask, the show where we look at the chaos behind online gaming culture. Remove the inspirational trailer music and ask why there is smoke coming out of the servers again. I'm Boss Mode, and today we're talking about one of the most beautiful, miserable, predictable cycles in all of MMORPG history. The expansion launch. You know the feeling. A cinematic trailer drops, the music swells. A dragon says something threatening in a voice that sounds like it was recorded inside a volcano. A developer tells you the team has listened to player feedback. The new expansion will be more player-friendly, more meaningful, more rewarding, more respectful of your time, more connected to the community, and somehow also be the biggest thing the game has ever done. Then you pre-order. Of course you pre-order. You pre-order the deluxe edition, maybe the premium deluxe edition, maybe the edition with early access, a digital art book you will never open, a pet that looks like a depressed lizard, and a mount that will be outdated by the time you finish the tutorial. You tell yourself you are buying value. You tell yourself you are supporting a game you love. But somewhere deep down, you know what you're really buying: hope. And hope in the MMO expansion cycle is expensive, because every expansion arrives with a promise. This one will change everything. This one will fix all the old problems. This one will give us the systems we wanted. This one will make the world feel alive again. This one will respect casual players without offending hardcore players. This one will create meaningful choices without forcing anybody into the wrong choice. This one will have enough content to last for years. And then, a few weeks later, half the player base is standing in a capital city asking, "So, what are we actually supposed to do now?" That is the expansion trap. It is the gap between the trailer and the Tuesday night reality. It is the distance between a bold new player-driven adventure and please complete 4 world activities before reset. It is the moment you realize that the feature described as a revolutionary progression experience is actually a reputation bar with a new coat of paint and a daily quest that sends you out to collect 6 haunted flowers. Again, the expansion trap is not that developers always lie. Sometimes they are honest. Sometimes they believe every word they say. Sometimes a feature looks amazing in development, hits a live audience, and get hit by an uncontrollable force known as several million players trying to optimize the fun out of it before launch. But players get trapped too. We hear what we want to hear. We fill in the gaps. Developers say there will be greater freedom of choice. And we imagine a limitless playground. What they may actually mean is that there are 3 quest hubs instead of 2. They say the world will evolve with player activity, and we imagine dynamic communities changing the map forever. What they mean is that an NPC moves 12 feet to the left after enough people complete an event. They say this expansion is built around player agency, and we imagine real consequences. What they mean is that we get to choose which identical daily quest we hate first. That is not always the deception. Sometimes it is just marketing language being marketing language. And marketing language is a magical dialect in which more of something becomes a transformational new era. Still, we fall for it every time because MMO players are romantics in armor. We complain like veterans of several wars, but the second a trailer shows a new continent glowing in the distance, we are ready to believe again. We remember the best launch nights. We remember the first time a zone felt huge. We remember running into a crowd of players and thinking, okay, this is why I play these games. And we want that feeling back. Developers know it. Publishers know it. The marketing team definitely knows it. Somewhere, every time an expansion enters production, a person gets assigned the secret task of finding the exact image that will make the experience MMO players forget the last 5 times they got disappointed. Usually it's in a floating city. Sometimes it's in a mysterious island, and occasionally it's a dragon. The dragon has never failed. The dragon is undefeated. Let's start with the hype machine because the expansion launch begins long before launch day. It begins with a teaser, a silhouette, a logo, a suspiciously vague phrase like the world will never be the same. And look, maybe the world will never be the same, usually because half of the classes got redesigned and everyone is angry. But the reveal cycle is built to create momentum. You get the cinematic, then the announcement panel, then the developer interviews, then the breakdown, then the roadmap, and the creator previews, then the reactions, then the predictive videos, then the argument videos, then the people making 20-minute videos based on one blurry screenshot of new armor set. By the time the launch arrives, people are not just excited about the expansion, they are emotionally invested in the version of it they have built inside their own head. That imagined version is always better than the real one. It has to be. The imaginary expansion has no server queue. It has no bugs. It has no quest chain where 300 players need to kill the same named monster that respawns every 7 minutes. The imaginary expansion has a deep endgame, a fair economy, a satisfying story, meaningful systems, good class balance, and enough content to entertain every kind of player forever. The imaginary expansion is incredible. The actual expansion has maintenance at 3 a.m. and an achievement that accidentally awards itself for dying near a mailbox. That is the problem of hype. It does not just raise expectation, it gives people time to build personal expectations the game never had a chance of meeting. And then there are the feature list. Oh yes, the feature list. Feature lists are where language starts doing parkour. New progression system. That could mean almost anything. Maybe it is a rich, flexible way to develop your character over time. Maybe it is a menu full of little circles that unlock after you collect enough glowing dust from activities you were already doing. Player housing improvements. Maybe you finally get a home that feels personal and meaningful. Maybe you get 3 new chairs, a wall torch, and a rug that requires 6 weeks of currency farming. Dynamic events. Maybe the world reacts to players in a new and exciting way. Maybe every 2 hours the same boss spawns in a field and 40 people beat it up while standing inside each other. New social systems. Maybe this means better guild tools, better mentoring, better communication, and stronger community features. Or maybe there is a new emote where your character points at a pie. The phrase itself does not tell you much, but MMO players do the rest. We see the words and immediately begin projecting our dreams onto them. And honestly, we cannot even be blamed entirely. We have been trained to search for the next big thing. MMO communities survive on anticipation. The current content might be stale. The current endgame might be exhausting. The current systems might be held together by code, hope, and a developer named Kevin who has not taken a vacation since 2019. But the next expansion, that might fix everything. It is always the next expansion, until it becomes the current expansion, at which point we begin waiting for the next one. That is not cynicism. That is the genre's business model with seasonal depression. Now, I'm not saying every expansion launch is bad. Some are genuinely great. Some launch with strong stories, memorable zones, exciting dungeons, satisfying progression, and enough confidence to make players forget their entire list of complaints for the least 1 month. But even successful expansions can fall into the same trap because launch content carries a brutal burden. It has to make everyone happy at once. The returning player wants a reason to come back. The veteran wants proof their years of investment still matter. The casual player wants to enjoy the story without being buried in homework. The hardcore player wants a challenging endgame with real rewards. The role player wants new spaces and new lore. The collector wants 100 things to chase. The PvP player wants balance, which is brave to ask for in any online game. The crafter wants an economy that is not instantly ruined by bots, exploits, or a guy named Gold Daddy who can apparently corner the market on enchanted fish. The streamer wants content. The guild leader wants enough structure to keep people active. The solo player wants to feel included. The player who skipped the last expansion wants to catch up without feeling like they enrolled in a community college course called Things You Were Supposed to Know Already. And everyone wants the new thing to feel new. That last part is harder than it sounds because MMO developers are always caught between innovation and familiarity. Players say they want something different. Then the second something is too different, they say it does not feel like the game anymore. Players say they are tired of the old systems. Then a new system launches, and they ask why it does not work exactly like the old system, but with fewer problems. We want surprise, but not confusion. We want freedom, but not uncertainty. We want meaningful choices, but we also want the best choice to be obvious, balanced, and available immediately. We want less grind, but we want more to do. We want content that lasts longer, but we want to finish it by Sunday night. That is the impossible audience every expansion is trying to serve. And developers do not always help themselves because instead of saying this expansion has a good story, new zones, and an endgame loop we hope you enjoy, They are forced into saying this expansion redefines what an MMO can be. That is a dangerous sentence. Nothing good has ever followed the words redefines what an MMO can be without at least one emergency patch. Then launch day comes. Launch day, the annual MMO ritual where optimism meets infrastructure. There's something almost sacred about it. People clear their schedules. They stock snacks. They charge headsets. They arrange raid groups. They make plans. They log in early. They promise themselves they will not stay up until 4 a.m. Then they spend 4 hours in queue. Launch day queues are their own kind of psychological experiment. They make you feel both included and excluded at the same time. You are part of something huge. You look at all these people. The game is alive. The community is buzzing. The excitement is real. Also, you are number 26,814 in line behind them. Every queue has phases. Phase 1 is optimism. This is moving pretty fast. Phase 2 is math. Okay, it moved 1,000 places in 20 minutes. If that pace holds, I can probably get in before I become legally deceased. Phase 3 is denial. Maybe they will increase the server capacity. Phase 4 is betrayal. Why did the queue go up? Phase 5 is bargaining. If I restart the client, maybe it will fix something. It will not fix something. You will lose your place. You know this. Everyone knows this. Yet every launch, someone does it. Somewhere right now, a player is looking at a frozen queue and whispering, maybe I should just restart. No, sit down. Do not touch anything. Once you get through the queue, you enter the next level of launch day. Performance roulette. Will the game work? Will your character load? Will your mount disappear halfway through the zone? Will every NPC be standing on top of every other NPC like a fantasy-themed traffic accident? Will the new quest work? Will the cutscene play? Will you get disconnected at the moment the expansion's big villain says something important, only to log back in and find yourself dead under a staircase? Nobody knows. That is part of the adventure. Developers always prepare for launch, obviously. They stress test, they predict demand, they build capacity, they plan emergency responses. But MMO launches are like trying to prepare for a restaurant for every person in the city deciding to eat there at the exact same minute while bringing their cousins, their guild, and a spreadsheet full of dietary demands. There is only so much you can simulate. And when things break, players react like they have been personally betrayed by electricity. There are posts, there are memes, there are refund demands, there are people explaining that this is unacceptable in the year 2026, as if the year itself was supposed to solve server architecture. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Launch chaos is a part of the memory. We hate it while it happens. We tell stories about it later. We remember the server crashes. We remember everyone stuck in the same starting zone. And we remember the world boss dying in 5 seconds because 200 players accidentally found it at once. We remember the bugged quest that created a pile of players jumping in a circle around a rock for 30 minutes. Launch disaster is terrible in real time and weirdly nostalgic afterwards. That does not mean developers get a free pass. A bad launch can poison momentum fast. If people cannot access the content they paid for, or if the game is unstable for days, or if major progression systems are broken, Frustration is fair. But it does mean we should admit something. Part of what we call the launch experience is shared inconvenience. MMOs turn technical failure into community folklore. That is a strange power. But even if launch day goes smoothly, the expansion trap is waiting, because after the servers stabilize, after the story starts, after the first rush of excitement, players begin looking at the actual content. Not the trailer content, not the promise, the content. And that is where things get real. The first few hours of an expansion are usually protected by novelty. Everything is new. The zone looks good. The music hits. You are seeing new characters, new enemies, new environments. You have new buttons to press, new gear to find, maybe a new class or specialization to learn. For a while, that is enough, but novelty has an expiration date. It is usually somewhere between "I just got here" and "Why am I gathering 10 more of these crystals?" The moment a player sees the loop, the spell breaks. Every expansion has a loop. It might be a good loop, it might be a bad loop. It might be a loop wearing a fake mustache and insisting it is a revolutionary player experience. But it is there. Do these activities get this currency, upgrade this thing, unlock this track, repeat next week? The expansion trap kicks in when the big promise system gets reduced to its daily behavior. Because a system can sound huge in a reveal, forge alliances with ancient powers, great. That sounds massive. Then the actual game says, complete 3 errands for owl person reputation. Suddenly you're not forging alliances, you are doing customer service for an owl. Or maybe the expansion promises meaningful player choice. You pick a path, you choose a faction, you decide where your character's loyalty lies. Dramatic, important, personal. Then, after hours of debate, guides appear explaining that one option is 2% better for damage in raids, another is better for PvP, and the third is for people who enjoy being politely excluded from group content. Meaningful choice becomes mandatory optimization in about 12 minutes. That is not entirely the developer's fault. MMO communities are incredible at extracting certainty from uncertainty. Give players 4 options and someone will build a ranking chart before dinner. Give them a flexible system and someone will discover the mathematically correct way to play it. Give them roleplay freedom and someone will ask whether their choice is viable for endgame content. That is what we do. We say we want agency, then demand a tier list. Still, the system has to survive that pressure. If it cannot, then the big promise turns into a punishment. Players do not want to feel like they choose wrong because they did not study a guide. They do not want to feel locked into a decision because they picked up an aesthetic that they liked instead of one that had 3% bonus. They do not want player choice to mean you have selected the slower route to being rejected from groups. And once that happens, the feature becomes another source of resentment. That brings us to the feature graveyard. Every expansion has one. Maybe it was the big new progression system that sounded amazing but became an obligation. Maybe it was the social system nobody used. Maybe it was a housing feature that launched with 5 furniture pieces and no reason to visit anyone. Maybe it was an exploration mode that had exactly one reward people cared about, so everyone ran the same route forever. Maybe it was a new profession overhaul that was supposed to make crafting meaningful, until the economy turned into a wasteland run by bots and people with more free time than oxygen. Maybe it was a massive faction war system that players abandoned because the rewards were not good enough. Maybe it was a new island, a new continent, new realm, new dimension, new timeline, new magical dream world, or new underground kingdom, or new floating rock that was introduced as the future of the game and quietly became a place where people only visit when a weekly quest tells them to. The feature graveyard is where ambitious ideas go after launch reality gets involved. And again, this is not always because developers are lazy or dishonest. Some systems fail because they were rushed. Some fail because they were underexplained. Some fail because they were overcomplicated. And some fail because players figured out the optimal route too quickly and transformed a broad experience into an assembly line. Some fail because the reward structure was wrong. That last one is huge. Players will do almost anything if the reward is good enough, and they will ignore almost anything if the reward is not. You can build a beautiful system full of depth and discovery, but if it gives a cosmetic hat and 27 copper coins while another activity gives user gear, congratulations, your beautiful system is now a ghost town. The players have spoken and they have said, that is not worth my time. MMO players can be sentimental, but they can also be brutally practical. We will praise a system in theory and never touch it in practice. We will say content should be fun for its own sake, then ask what it drops before we take a single step inside. That is not necessarily hypocrisy. Time is limited. Games are built around rewards, but it means developers have to be careful when they promise broad living systems. If the system does not fit into the actual life of the game, it becomes decoration. And players notice. They notice when a huge feature gets abandoned after one patch. They notice when the developers stop mentioning it. They notice when the roadmap quietly stops using the word evolving. They notice when the exciting new system becomes an old menu nobody opens anymore. That is when the cynicism begins. Players start saying, why should I care about the next expansion feature? They will abandon it in a year anyway. And that is the brutal thing for live service game to earn from its own audience, because trust is hard to build and very easy to turn into a meme. Now let's talk about the other half of the expansion trap. Players consuming content at impossible speed. This is where the community has to take some responsibilities. Developers can spend years making an expansion. Players can devour it in a weekend. That is not always a criticism. Some players love racing through content. They take time off. They compete for world first achievements. They want to be among the first to reach max level, clear the raid, solve the systems, and make the guides. Dominate the economy or discover the exploit before it gets patched. That is a valid way to play, but it creates a strange problem. Players will finish the available content at a speed that makes it seem like they were never enough content to begin with. Then they will ask what the developers have been doing for the last 3 years. The developers have been making the content you just inhaled like a man trying to win a hot dog contest. This is especially obvious with story content. A campaign that takes a casual player several weeks might take a dedicated player 2 nights. Then both groups talk about it as if they had the same experience. One player says, "I'm still exploring, there's so much to do." Another says, "There's nothing to do." Both can be right. This is one of the hardest things about MMO expansion discourse. content. It is not the single measurement. It depends on your pace, your goals, your group, or your free time, your tolerance for repetition, and how much of the game you consider meaningful. For some players, a beautiful zone and a good quest chain is enough for weeks. For others, if there is no difficult raid, no ranked PvP, no economy chase, no collection system, no social purpose, and no ongoing progression, the expansion is over the second the credits roll. Neither player is crazy, but they are often arguing as if the other one is lying. Then you get the weekend consumption problem. The player who rushes everything, burns out, and begins haunting forums like a ghost demanding more content. They have completed every quest, collected every visible collectible, watched every guide, found every secret, hit every cap, and apparently slept for 20 minutes between Friday and Monday. Then they say, there's nothing to do. And maybe there is not. Maybe the expansion is thin. That happens, but sometimes what they mean is there is nothing left that I personally want to do after I completed 3 months of intended progression in 48 hours. That is a different complaint. The genre has never solved this. Developers cannot make enough content to outspace the most dedicated players without turning the game into a job for everyone else. But if they add time gates to slow people down, players accuse them of artificial retention. If they do not time gate, people burn through the content and accuse them of having nothing prepared. It's a no-win design problem. And MMO players, bless us, will complain in both directions at the same time. This is time-gated. I hate being forced to wait. There's no content. I finished everything. You are the content locus, and the scheduling department picked a struggle. Still, developers need to be honest about what an expansion actually is. Is it not infinite? It cannot be. A new expansion is a starting point, not a permanent solution to boredom. It is a collection of zones, systems, stories, activities, and loops that have to be maintained over time. The problem is that expansions are often marketed like a complete reinvention. Then when players discover the familiar structure underneath, they feel cheated. Because underneath the new continent, the new villain, the new currency, and the new visual effects, the game often returns to the same basic truth. You will need to do things repeatedly. You will need to gather a resource. You will need to improve your gear. You will need to wait for reset. You will need to run content with strangers, friends, guildmates, or people who leave after the first wipe and type, "Sorry, dinner." You will need to decide how much of this you actually enjoy. And that is the Endgame Reveal. The Endgame Reveal is not cinematic. It is not the moment the expansion stops introducing itself and shows you what your Tuesdays are going to be like. That moment matters more than almost anything else. A great expansion can survive a weak launch if the long-term loop is satisfying. People will forgive bugs. They will forgive queues. They will forgive a broken quest or two. They will even forgive a storyline that gets weird around the third act if the game gives them a reason to log in next week. But if the endgame loop feels like obligation, the expansion starts dying in public. Players become tired in a specific way. Not angry exactly, not at first. They just start logging in later. Then they stop doing the optional stuff. Then they miss a reset. Then they say they are taking a short break. Then they appear in Discord once every 3 weeks and ask whether the game is good now. That is the actual content drought. It is not when the developers stop releasing things, it is when players stop believing the next thing will be worth doing. And once that happens, every patch becomes a test. Can this patch bring people back? Can this new dungeon matter? Can this system be fixed? Can this event feel exciting instead of mandatory? Can the developers convince players that they are not simply adding another layer to the same treadmill? Sometimes they can. Sometimes a patch saves an expansion. Sometimes a major adjustment turns a hated system into a tolerable one. Sometimes the community comes around, and sometimes the developers listen, pivot, simplify, and earn trust back. But sometimes the expansion is already trapped by its own promises. That is the real cost of overselling. If you promise a revolution and deliver a decent update, people will call it a failure. If you promise a solid update and deliver a decent update, people might be pleasantly surprised. Expectation is the multiplier. It can turn good content into a disappointment. It can turn flawed content into disaster. It can turn a minor issue into evidence that the entire game is doomed. And MMO communities are uniquely good at doom. We have seen the cycle. We know the language. Dead game, copium. Players are leaving. This is the worst expansion ever. This is the best expansion ever. It's over. We're so back. All of these statements can happen within the same week, sometimes the same day, and often from the same person. The community war after launch is almost as predictable as the server problems. You have the defenders who think any criticism is negative. You have the critics who think any enjoyment is a delusion. You have the veterans who compare every new expansion to the one they loved 10 years ago. You have the new players who are just confused about why everyone is yelling about a currency they have not unlocked yet. You have the content creators who need opinions because opinions are content. You have the forum warriors who have been waiting for this moment since the reveal trailer. And you have the silent majority who are just playing the game and wondering why the guild chat suddenly feels like a political debate about a dragon armor. This is where reasonable discussion often dies. A player says, "I like the expansion, but the system feels repetitive." Someone replies, "So you hate the game?" Another says, "You people complain about everything." A third says, "The game has always been like this," which is not a defense. That is just the gaming equivalent of saying the roof has always leaked. Then somebody announces they are quitting. Nobody believes them because they announced it in general chat channel. The most exhausting part of expansion discourse is that people forget mixed feelings are allowed. You can enjoy the story and dislike the progression system. You can love the new zones and hate the crafting changes. You can think the expansion is good overall while still believing launch content was overpromised. That is not betrayal. That is called having a functioning brain. But MMOs create tribes. Once people pick a side, every criticism feels personal. If you like the expansion, criticism can feel like someone trying to take away your fun. If you disliked it, praise can feel like people denying you frustration. Everyone becomes defensive because games are not just products to us. They are places we spend time, make friends, build routines, and attach memories to. That emotional investment is real. And that is why the expansion trap hurts more than a bad movie or a disappointing single-player sequel. When an MMO expansion misses, it can feel like a place you care about made a promise it could not keep. You're not just disappointed in a feature. You are disappointed in the future you thought you were going to have there. That sounds dramatic, And it is dramatic. This is MMO culture. We do not do mild disappointment. We do 6-hour Discord calls, spreadsheet arguments, goodbye posts that are 3 pages long, and then we log in again after maintenance because the new mount might have dropped. That is who we are. So what should developers actually promise? Less. And more clearly. Do not tell players a system will change the world unless it really can. Do not call every new feature transformative. Do not use the word meaningful if the choice is going to be reset by the next patch. Do not call something player-driven if the player's main influence is choosing which daily objective to complete. Tell people what the expansion is. Tell them what will be available at launch. Tell them what is coming later. Tell them what is experimental. Tell them what might change. Players can handle honesty better than they can handle hype that collapses on contact. And players have work to do too. We need to stop treating trailers like contracts written by destiny. We need to stop filling in every blank with our perfect version of the game. We need to recognize that every expansion will have limits, loops, compromises, and problems. That does not mean accepting bad design. It does not mean pretending broken systems are fine. It does not mean lowering standards until we applaud the game for launching a quest without an error message. It means criticizing what is actually there. Not only the imagined version that never existed, because that imagined version will always win. No developer can compete with the expansion you build in your head while watching a cinematic at 2 a.m. The reality check is simple. Launch content is really enough to carry an MMO forever. It was never supposed to be. The best expansions gives players a strong opening, a world worth inhabiting, systems worth learning, and a long-term loop that does not feel like punishment. The worst expansions gives players a list of promises, a week of chaos, a system they do not understand, and a roadmap that starts sounding more exciting than the game they just bought. That is the difference. And the reason we keep falling into the trap is also the reasons MMOs are special. We want to believe in worlds that grow. We want the next chapter to matter. We want to return to a familiar game and feel surprised again. We want to stand at the edge of a new zone with hundreds of other players and believe for one moment that there is still something out there worth discovering. That feeling is real. It's worth chasing. We just need to stop handing our entire emotional well-being to a featured list written in cinematic trailer language. So the next time a developer says this expansion changes everything, take a breath, watch the trailer, enjoy the dragon, appreciate the floating city, maybe pre-order if you want to. I am not your accountant, and your mount collection is between you and your bank statement. But remember what happens after the music ends. There will be queues, there will be bugs, there will be balance problems, there will be a new currency, there will be a weekly cap, there will be someone on a forum explaining why the game is dead before the first raid even opens. And there will be hope anyway, because we are MMO players. We know better. We just do not care when the trailer is good enough. Send your comments, questions, worst launch day stories, expansion disappointments, feature graveyard memories, and tales of the system your guild swore would change the game before nobody touched it again. Send those to podcast@mmomadness.com. I want the Q horror stories. I want the broken quest lines. I want the expansion feature that was supposed to define the future and became a tab you forgot existed. And remember, if an expansion promises to change everything, make sure everything includes the part where you can actually log in. I'm Boss Mode, and this has been MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask.